here has had a vegetable garden before? Was it in the ground or in a raised bed? Did you have any problems or did you have a great harvest? Maybe you are just starting a garden. I'm Dr. Denise DeBusk from Rescue My Plant, and during this training, I'm going to teach you the techniques of square foot gardening. I recommend that you purchase the all-new Square Foot Gardening 3rd edition book by Mel Bartholomew, which provides construction details and valuable charts to help you on your way. In this video, I'll go over some principles in designing your vegetable garden, including how to select a site, construct your bed, and set it up. Throughout this training, I want you to focus on this motto: plan first, plant later. By planning first, you will sidetrack many of the mistakes that new gardeners make. With square foot gardening, you have a bit more flexibility compared to traditional row gardening since they take up less space. They can fit into almost any space that fits the right conditions. If it gets enough sunlight, then you can put a garden there within reason. Here are some things to think about when picking where to put your garden. First, you want it close to the house. That way you can look at it more often. This is especially important if you get a pest problem or there is a watering issue. You want to have an area that gets plenty of sunlight. Most vegetables do best with at least 6 to 8 hours of sun. Some vegetables, like leafy vegetables such as kale, lettuce, and spinach, and root vegetables like beets, carrots, and turnips, can tolerate different amounts of shade, but none can live in full shade. On the other hand, full direct sun from dawn to dusk can affect those same plants, although you can always put a shade canopy over them. Remember that sun exposure changes through the year as the seasons change, so the sun is lower in the sky and less direct in the early spring and late fall than in midsummer. There are also fewer hours of light during that time. There are a couple of reasons to stay away from trees and shrubs. The first is that they cast shade on the garden, and the second is that they have a way of seeking out moisture and nutrients. They will reach out and send roots into your square foot boxes if they can reach them. You also want to keep your garden from low-lying areas where the rainwater pools. Although plants need water, if they sit in a pool of water, the root will become saturated and oxygen can't get to them, killing them. It will also rot wooden boxes and turn aisles between rows into muddy messes. If you have no other area, then you can add sand to the area, raising it up a bit, or you can elevate your boxes completely off the ground. I'll have some designs for that. A lot of times, traditional row gardens do poorly due to the soil type. Since you will be making your own soil, you don't have to worry about that. Lastly, make sure the garden is near a water source. I keep a 5-gallon bucket near my garden so that I can scoop water on some of my further plants, but you still don't want to have to carry that water far. Being close to a hose spigot or rain barrel will make that easier. With all the parameters to think about, can you think of a place that you can have your garden that is close to the house and water source with plenty of sun and away from trees and low-lying areas? Building a square foot garden can be as easy as using 4 1x6 or 2x6 lumber screwed together, which is available at any big box store or local hardware store. The ends are joined together with deck screws. The traditional size is 4 feet by 4 feet, which will be divided into 16 squares. You can change up the size, but it is best to limit the width to between 2 to 4 feet. Why do you think that is? If you guess that your arms can reach over to tend to the garden, then you're right. You can make your box longer, although you don't want to go any longer than 12 feet. You don't want it so long that it's cumbersome to go around it. It is typically in multiples of 4. For kids, a 3 foot by 3 foot garden is good so that they can reach everything. The traditional building material is lumber. Wood will break down in the environment, so the type of lumber you use will determine how quickly you have to rebuild your garden. Pine degrades the quickest and will need to be replaced in 1 to 2 years. Cedar and cypress have natural resistance to rot and insect damage and tend to break down in about 4 years. You can also use synthetic lumbers that consist of recycled plastics bonded to wood products, such as sawdust. You will likely need to reinforce the corners with metal brackets. You can use stone, brick, or block. Many like to plant herbs and pollinator plants in the cinder block holes as an added bonus. You can see in the photo what my friend Jerry did in her new garden. If you are using concrete blocks, you may want to line the inside with plastic since concrete is very alkaline and it can increase the pH of the soil. Plants prefer more acidic soil. You can also use metal or other material. The key will be using a material to which grid slats can be attached or anchored if you live in a windy area. Let's talk about the depth of a garden. Most vegetable roots only grow within the first 6 inches, so you can be successful with just 6 inches of soil. For crops that need more depth, such as carrots and potatoes, you can add a top hat to one of the squares. For my potatoes, I prefer to grow them in a grow bag separated from the garden, since you need to gradually add soil to the bag once the foliage grows so that you grow more potatoes. A top hat is a 1 foot by 1 foot square that goes on top of the garden, bringing it up the height to 12 inches. When it comes to the design of your garden, it is based on your area and imagination. I'm pretty basic when it comes to my design and prefer the standard sizes. You can find different raised bed construction plans on the internet as well as in the square foot gardening book. U and L-shaped gardens are common, which will allow you to work the garden easily. You can also have 2 to 4 tiered levels to the garden to provide different depths. You can see my garden has one side at 6 inches and the other side with 12 inches. If you have a smaller area to work with, you can have a 1 foot strip of garden. You notice that this one has a trellis to maximize space and grow vertically. It may be difficult to figure out how many squares to build if you are a beginner. Since square foot gardening is such a productive growing method, many newcomers plant more than they can use. Start small with 1 or 2 boxes. Here are some basic guidelines when it comes to how much the garden will produce. One 4 foot by 4 foot garden that is 16 squares will make a salad for 1 adult per day. If you want a salad for 2 adults, then you need 2 gardens. Adding a second garden will add supper vegetables to your salad. A third garden will allow you to have extra vegetables to preserve, show off, and give away. This could also be for special crops like your cooking herbs, pollinators, or specialty crops. There are ways to adapt the method to accommodate special situations and needs. What if you have physical limitations? You can have an elevated garden by placing the box on a plywood sheet with a liner on top. Gardens should be elevated to 24 inches for wheelchairs and 30 inches for those standing and using the garden. I have a construction design for this elevated garden as well as a garden bench in the resources. If you don't have a yard and limited space for a garden, you can place them on patios, decks, and balconies. I have a cute 2 foot by 2 foot demo garden box with base and handles that I can move from place to place. For balconies and decks, you can install a 6 to 12 inch wide box on the floor or bolted on both sides to the railing. If you have a heavily wooded yard, you can have small boxes wherever there is enough light. You need at least 3 hours for leafy vegetables. You can also prune some limbs to allow more light through. These gardens are great for community gardens and school gardens. I often see too large of plots for community gardens, and then you have to walk inside the garden to do any maintenance. If planted correctly, square foot gardens shouldn't require much weeding, which is a plus when trying to operate and get approval for a garden. Do you have a steeply sloped yard? If you do, you can still garden. You would cut into the side of the slope and use the soil dug out to fill in the foot of the slope so that you can have a level area. Let me walk you through the process of how I built my most recent garden. I had this area empty for about 4 years, and I've always wanted to have a vegetable garden on it. It gets the afternoon sun, so it is a great area to grow all crops. You'll notice that the edge there stays more shaded, so I didn't put a bed there. But I might add something for more shade-tolerant crops. Before I purchased these 4-foot by 8-foot metal raised beds, I measured the area to see what would fit. I wanted a 3-foot spacing between the beds, so I took that into account. I happened to buy mine on Amazon when they had a special sale. I wanted to have a trellis, so I used cattle paneling to create an arched trellis. I have some peas growing on it in the photo. I surrounded the garden with fencing since I have rabbits that visit. As a side note, when it comes to arches, my husband wasn't thrilled with the idea of using cattle paneling. Something about it not being attractive. So he wanted me to buy something decorative. Since I had already had my garden in place with the soil in it, finding an arch to fit a 3-foot aisle was impossible to find. I spent hours looking on the web. The most narrow were 3 foot 11 inches. So keep that in mind if you want to do something decorative. Plan first, plant later, and put the measurements into your plan before you place your garden. Once you have measured your area, built or constructed your bed, you can set it up. If you have existing grass, you can mow it short and place cardboard or landscape fabric down. When I created my beds, I didn't need to kill grass, but I have major problems with fire ants, so I used the fabric to help with those as well as weeds. You can see in my photo how using the weed fabric looked. I used preen weed control fabric and placed landscape staples every 18 inches to tamper down the fabric. I put the mulch back around the beds. Typically, you don't want to space your beds further than 3 feet because you don't want to give the weeds more room to grow. Make sure you mulch the aisles. Pine bark will not degrade as quickly as some of the others. 3 feet is also a perfect distance for a wheelbarrow to get in, as well as room to kneel down and garden. I use a reversible kneeling chair since mulch is not fun to kneel on. In my plan, I kept in mind the orientation of the sun. I positioned my garden north-south to capitalize on the sun. Trellises are typically positioned on the north side, although I didn't mind between the beds as an arch. I left room to place some at the end of the bed as well. The grid is what really makes this raised bed a square foot garden. This is what helps you achieve the amazing results of this gardening method. I'll be teaching you how to plant in these squares in a future video, but it is important to visualize the 1-foot squares. The most traditional grids are made from lattice slats or plastic lathe material cut to fit the square foot garden box. It is secured at the intersection with small bolts, then screwed into the box. At the end of the season, you can detach the grid from the box and fold up the grid. Other materials that are commonly used to make the grid include vinyl and PVC. Some people use string, but it gets dirty, you have to nail it into the bed, and the nails get rusty, and often people don't replace it. So Mel Bartholomew doesn't recommend string. Since I have a metal garden, I plan on using PVC pipe. In this example, we put together a PVC grid in one of my vegetable gardening classes. We used 1/2-inch PVC pipe and drilled 1/4-inch holes every foot, placing 1.5-inch screws to hold the 2 pieces of PVC in place, and put a washer and a wing nut on them. This grid was placed on top and removed when the soil needed to be touched up by adding compost. So what are your next steps? We are going to plan first, plant later. First, you want to take a look at your yard during different times of the day and see how your light is distributed. Identify the best place to have a garden. Take a before photo and take measurements. Determine what size you want to have and can fit. Sketch it out. If you are going to have multiple gardens, take into account the space between the rows. Now that you have your sizes, identify what you want your garden to be made of. Wood, metal, composite, block. You can start looking for easy to build beds or pick up materials at your local home improvement store. Purchase the materials and build it. If you want another set of eyes to look at your design, pop it into the chat and we'll go through it during the live session, or I'll comment on it in the community.